Welcome to Everything is Changing. I am Ahmetcan Uzlaşık. Perspective is everything, and everything is changing. Welcome to Everything is Changing. Today I have two amazing guests from Paris, France. Gabriel Bourdon-Fattal, the co-director of Climate Whistleblowers, and Maria Garriga Zamora, project officer, again working at the Climate Whistleblowers. Welcome to you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Very hot.
Well, I hosted many different climate organizations in this podcast, but I have to be honest, what you do is probably the coolest. How often do you hear that what you have been doing is actually pretty cool?
I'm not gonna lie to you. It happens quite often. I've even one time somebody said to me that they were expecting me to do not such a cool job. So I think it was a backhanded compliment, but I'm sure it attests to how cool this one is.
Well, it's so useful, exciting, and also a bit dangerous at the same time. But we are going to discuss everything from now on. Let's start with something very simple because I'm sure that many people have heard the word whistleblowing, but climate whistleblowing is a bit different. I never heard that before until I met Gabriel in Perugia this year at the International Journalism Festival. So let's start simple. What is climate whistleblowing and why do we need it?
So let's start from the whistleblower. What is a whistleblower? Because legally speaking, and this is what we're trying to define here, it's someone who usually within the framework of the work has been witness to wrongdoing and tries to reveal this wrongdoing, to reveal it to the public or to the authorities in order for it to end. And a couple of years ago, before we launched Climate Whistleblowers, CW, we'll call it CW now, we realized that there is a specific kind of whistleblowing, which is environmental whistleblowing. And we thought that these people reveal crimes against the planet, against the environment, against the public, should receive extra protection and specific amplification for what they do. Especially because it's incredibly important, we need more climate whistleblowers, we need more people and citizens to step forward and protect the environment, but also because it's very dangerous and very risky, because the forces that destroy climate and destroy nature are incredibly powerful, very resentful. And so if someone dares to speak against them, they might pay a huge price.
Are you the first? Is Climate Whistleblowers the first organization that actually had done it? Did we have any alternative in the past?
We are the first organization that is fully dedicated to environmental whistleblowers. You have organizations that protected environmental defenders, that can be whistleblowers. You have organizations that protected whistleblowers that were also environmental. But we are the first that is fully and completely dedicated to blowing the whistle on the environment.
Yeah. Well, I have so many questions, but let me continue with Maria now. Maria, how's the process? Like, let's say I work in an airlines company, and this company, I know this because I have been writing about it, this company claims to be making contributions to the SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuels. I'm just making that up right now. How do I contact you, and how do we move forward from there?
Very good question, and let's speak in alleged terms because for legal reasons. No, but
Yeah, of course.
yeah. So we have a hotline, and we also have an email address that is a Proton email address. So everything is encrypted. What we do is, since we work on a case by case basis, somebody contacts us, tells us just very quickly what the allegations are, what they have witnessed, what they want to reveal, and then from there we start investigating whatever they are alleging. And then if it's something that falls within our mandate and that we can do something about, we continue speaking to the person, we set up a call, and then we set up a strategy to see how we can work together. Because in our mandate, it's not only to protect these people, but also to make sure that their disclosures reach the public that need to be reached. And so amplification is a part of that.
And also, I'm just assuming that person should have access to some kind of like documents from that organization, right? It cannot be just based on a hearsay. He needs to be, for example, an accountant or someone who has access to things that actually, matter and will show the actual greenwashing or however you call it, the wrongdoing.
So it's very important to have proof to back up the disclosures 100%. That being said, so a whistleblower needs to have privileged access to this information. It's not something that the general public can access. It's not just someone that's an activist that's witnessing something and saying, I want to speak about it. But that being said, sometimes testimony is enough if they have witnessed this wrongdoing and can prove it in some way.
Mm.
But yes, proof is very, very important. So, as many documents, again, being very careful about what you're backing up, what you are taking. You need to be very careful. That's also important. Why it's important to contact us as soon as possible, because our lawyers will advise you on what is safe to do and not to do, to make sure that you're not putting yourself in more danger than you should. But yeah, everything that can be collected is very useful, of course.
Okay, let's move forward with this example. For example, Gabriel, I approached you guys, the climate whistleblowers, with my inside information from this airlines company, let's say. And okay, we made a report or something like that, probably that would be published in your website. But do you work with journalists directly? Like, how does that work? Okay, you expose the wrongdoing, and then what? How do you make sure that that particular wrongdoing will be covered in the media?
So really, the idea behind whistleblowing is to fuel the field, to give proper quality evidence and testimony to all actors that can act on it. And acting on it can be a journalist, surely. Many times work with journalists, but not only. And I think we see more and more journalists also that are keen to have a real impact for the stories. So this evidence and this information can go to the New York Times or to a small environmental media, but it can also go to the police and authorities that can investigate, and it can go to civil society who will launch an advocacy campaign. So depending on the information that we receive and the wish of the insider, the whistleblower that reveals it, we try to really think of all the actors possible so the information will get where it needs to go.
Okay, and I guess many people will wonder, how do you protect your whistleblowers? Because whistleblowing could be a dangerous job. We're not just, I mean, if I could be a bit less political correct, if I would say, there are whistleblowers from Colombia, there are whistleblowers from Africa, which you also have an Africa unit, a side organization that works on to protect the whistleblowers in Africa. How do you ensure their security?
I think you said it just right. There's a lot of different contexts for
Yeah,
whistleblowers. In some places, you might get sued and you might lose your job, which is difficult. In other contexts, you might lose your life, right? And we see many whistleblowers
yeah.
who get murdered regularly. So protection for us is really an all-encompassing thing. In many cases, we provide lawyers, provide psychological support, even financial, because people unfortunately might lose their jobs. But in cases like Colombia or Africa, like you said, there it gets physical. And in these cases, we help exfiltrate whistleblowers, which is very complicated, or at least find them shelters. So we have a shelter with another organization in Ghana that protects whistleblowers and shelters them for a couple of months. So it might be that protection will be something legal, but it might be bodyguards and actual physical protection for you and your loved ones.
Yeah, and I cannot even imagine you're whistleblowing on your government, let's say, and then you need to reallocate. You guys need to reallocate that person perhaps to a shelter or even sometimes to a different country. I remember you saying me in Italy when we first met, you had this whistleblower from Colombia called Andres Olarte, if I'm pronouncing his name right. And he moved to Europe, right? Because he exposed a big scandal in Colombia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you pronounced it correctly, Andres Solarte. And just to give some quick context to the audience, Andres Solarte was working in the national oil company Ecopetrol in Colombia, and he discovered a lot of wrongdoing, both ecological wrongdoing, but also human rights abuses. And it was a very, very difficult context for him because he started getting death threats and he had to flee the country. Lucky enough for him, he was in a good position to be able to migrate easily, relatively easily, and relocate to Germany, where now he lives and has even the nationality. Again, that doesn't even make it any easier because he has had to flee the country and is not able to be with his family or loved ones. After having said that, because he now has not only the company but also the government against him.
I'll give you just another example. We had two whistleblowers with our sister organization called Grady Coco and Navi Malela, and they worked in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they
Hmm.
worked for a bank, and at the bank, they saw people arriving with huge amounts of cash. And they looked in the accounts of the bank, and they saw that the cash was linked to a billionaire, Israeli billionaire called Dan Gertler, which has made his fortune from mining in DRC and from very shady deals and from the natural resources of the Congo. They blew the whistle and they had to flee one after the other. And for both of them, we need to support both them and their families getting out of the country where they live in very great conditions to Europe, to exile, to a complete different context. And they were later, a couple of months after, sentenced to death in the DRC. And they still, years and years after now, are waiting for this death sentence to be carried out. So it's a good story because they managed to blow the whistle and are proud of their decision. But at the same time, the price they paid is incredible.
Yeah, the price they paid, as you said, I mean, doing the right thing has unfortunately has big consequences for some people to have to they sometimes have to flee their countries and maybe even, as you said, get threatened with their lives. So which countries do most whistleblowers contact you from? We talked about Africa, we talked about Colombia, but do they mainly come from Europe, would you say? Would that be true?
Until now, yes, we are a relatively young organization. We were only born in 2023. So until now, a lot of them have come from Europe, from quite different countries in Europe. But now we're getting more and more from Latin America. Of course, a lot from Africa because of the past experience of the sister organization. But yeah, again, we work on a case by case basis. The thing about this type of work is that when you get one, and then it becomes public, more and more people from that context and from that country start learning about it and start wanting to blow the whistle as well.
The snowball effect,
Exactly, it is.
as we call it, yeah.
And we really believe that, and that's, I think, what carries our work is the more people speak out and the more proof we have, the more people will feel safer to speak out and to see that it's not just, just one very very brave person. No, it can be so many of us citizens that are seeing the state of the world right now and deciding to speak out for the greater, for the public interest.
Yeah, you said, Gabriel, do you want to add something?
Yeah, really quickly, I want to say, like you
Yeah.
said, I think climate whistleblowing is a bit of a new term, right? We didn't see a lot of it. And when we started the organization, we were not sure what a climate whistleblower looks like. And a lot of people were saying, oh, you're going to get oil company, we're going to get ExxonMobil whistleblowers. And what we saw in the past 3 years is something quite interesting and encouraging is that many people from many backgrounds define themselves as climate and environmental whistleblowers. So we can have really factory workers, we can have people who work for PR companies, we can have bankers, and we can have indigenous leaders or activists who witness things against their communities. So I think in that sense, it's incredibly interesting to see that in different languages, contexts, cultures, people see this as a way of action.
Yeah, I think I would agree because most people would expect the whistleblowers come from like fossil fuels industry or energy industry, energy related sectors. But as you just gave an example from Africa, two bankers became whistleblowers. I mean, this proves that it could happen in almost any industry, right? This I think this is the most fascinating part about your job, so that you have to deal with many different sectors that you probably perhaps never heard of before. So that also makes your job really hard because you're a small team. Gabriel just told me before the interview that there are 9 people working for climate whistleblowers, and I'm just assuming that one case is taking a lot of time of yours. So how do you deal with how many people reach out to you monthly or yearly? I mean, as you said, it's been 3 years, but how many cases you exposed in the last 3 years, for example?
I mean, yes, we are a small team. I think it's both, as you said, the fascinating is learning so much about so many different sectors. It is also, there's a lot of sometimes time constraints, so we need to very quickly understand what it is that they're trying to blow the whistle on. So trying to, as fast as possible, understand and maybe reach out to experts on that topic, of course, with complete confidentiality, to try to, just quickly understand what can we do about this, how illegal is this, what is going on. But again, sorry, we can't really give you many concrete numbers, just because, for example, sometimes some cases In some cases, someone reaches out to us with a very specific thing they want to blow the whistle on. They have the document, they have it ready. They just want to leak that information and then get that to the press, and that's it. In that case, maybe it will take us 2 months and we will not dedicate that much time to it. And then sometimes, for example, the investigation that just came out unrestricted on motorbikes, um, the person contacted us in 2024, and ever since then there's been a very big investigation that has been going on. We've dedicated almost a year to it of our own time and in a consortium with many different investigative journalists, and that was, a huge case that has very different repercussions. So yeah, many people contact us. Some of them take very little time, some of them take a lot of time. That's also the good thing about working in a small team, is that we are able to, if we consider that the case is vital and that needs a lot of resources, we can decide to allocate so much time to it.
Well, I have so many questions. Okay, let me first ask this. So, we know that in some countries, there are certain laws protecting the whistleblowers, right? So, are there any positive examples where someone blows the whistle and in the end not loses his or her job and just everything just continues as it was before? Do we have any positive examples? Like, because we talked about people fleeing their countries, like getting death sentence. But are we like, do we have normal examples as well?
No, we do have many. I think there's something incredibly positive happening with whistleblowing. Is It's a term that, first of all, is protected legally more today. We can see in Europe, but not only in Europe, across Africa as well, and Latin America, more and more propositions, draft laws, civil society bearing this to actually protect these whistleblowers. The laws are not perfect; they're not always implemented, but it means that there is an extra tool for these people to blow the whistle. And something even more important is happening is that culturally people understand whistleblowing more, and it's more legitimized to blow the whistle. It's less stigmatized. So we have at this point so many examples of people who blow the whistle, even if they pay a price, because usually they pay a little price. People come out of it proud. They come out of it with employers who understand them. They come out of it with impact. So we had many cases in which tribunals used the term whistleblowers and judges understood what it was, and it went well. Yeah. It's not the one we talk about here, but it's really impressive.
And
Yeah.
if I can
Please,
add
Maria.
something, I mean, you said, I think it's also relative to understand what is the price to pay and what your life will look like after, because many times people are speaking out because they don't want their life to continue being in that way, right? And they maybe don't want to continue doing what they were doing. We've also have examples of people that, for example, a whistleblower that we worked with a lot called Polina Zabrodskaya, who was working in an ad firm, and she blew the whistle on greenwashing. Of course, she lost her job there, but she then was able to transform her career into a much more positive, climate related ad career. And I mean, she's, aside from being an incredible and exceptional professional, she's also a person that is now sticking to her values and, standing up for what's right. So yeah, it had consequences on her, but it also changed her life for the better.
And I'm sure this has an effect on the companies as well, because normally, like, companies have this mindset, especially the more institutionalized ones. Oh, we are a family, we have a company culture. If you have a problem, just come, I don't know, talk with the HR, we'll solve it and everything. But now that there are more and more whistleblowers, they're also, I guess, a bit afraid, and that perhaps paved the way for them to be more careful with their actions as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's a very something that surprises people a lot when we say it, is that the vast majority of our whistleblowers have tried to blow the whistle internally before coming to us. So they've tried to speak about what was happening inside the company, to try to make a change on the inside and to try to give them the chance to do what's right. And then they were either silenced or, put aside or just fired. And then that's when they want to say it out loud. So I think always our message to companies, and then when they want to speak out about it, it's never to try to destroy the company or to try to bring any harm to the industry. It's usually always because they want to make a change in the industry and they want to see it thrive and do better. So we always try to, bring this message to companies. You want to have whistleblowers that are telling you what's going wrong in the company to give you a chance to do things right. And even when we're meeting with legislators and people that are trying to understand the issue well and see how, as an ecosystem, we can try to make it easier and safer, it's always trying to also accompany the companies and show them that you can do things right if you want to. But yes, there is more and more procedures. Sometimes the procedures are there, and unfortunately, they don't work. Cases where
Yeah.
somebody will try to blow the whistle, and then it's the HR person that gets it. Fine, it's the procedures are not always right.
I think the tricky part here, Gabriel said something very important in that sense. Culturally, people are also getting more and more used to seeing and accepting, embracing whistleblowing as well. I think the tricky part here is blowing the whistle on your government, perhaps, because that could easily be labeled as, in many countries, as a treason, as a betrayal to your own country and government. Although that your country has been doing many wrongdoings, many, let's say, corruption, but most people would still not choose to blow the whistle on their government because they might think that it could be something like a treason. What do you think, Gabriel?
I think this is exactly why we exist. Is I think we live now, and you know it's as well as us in a period of increased repression capacity. Companies are becoming bigger, they're becoming scarier, they're becoming stronger, and at the same time, governments are way more repressive than they used to. And this creates this weird phenomenon where actually whistleblowers are more important because media, civil society, the state is weakened, but at the same time it's way more risky to blow the whistle. So we are here a bit to compensate for that. We're here a bit for these people that you talk about that are afraid of blowing the whistle against the government, especially, to say, oh, there might be enough of a support system around me that I will be able to do that, even though it's scary.
I think you guys are like the Batman sign on the sky. Even though you don't see the Batman, you just see the sign and you're like, oh, I mean, I need to be careful. Like your shadow is there, I guess.
We are absolutely fine with that metaphor.
We'll take it.
Well, now the hard question comes though. I mean, first I gave this compliment and then I have to ask this. Who funds you? I mean, because this is always important because we were talking about, like, let's say you help a whistleblower to relocate to a different country. You find them a shelter, and then you probably, because since these people might lose their jobs, you also give them financial assistance and psychosocial assistance as well. And these are not free. So, how do you find the money to deal with these cases? And of course, your operational budget, you are 9 people, your salaries and everything, of course.
Of course, salaries are important. Now we have a couple of foundations, private foundations, that all are listed on our website, by the way, if anyone is interested. And these are foundations that are interested in our mission, and they are looking for activities that can bring impact, really impact to society. And we've also been very lucky to have foundations who understand that our job is flexible, it's complicated. We work a lot in emergencies, so they are quite flexible in the budgets they give us, and they don't ask too much from us after that.
Yeah. The reason why I ask this is there are many, for example, let me just give an example. I'm not going to give any names, but there are many investigative journalism organizations. And recently we have been finding out more and more that the people who have been funding those investigative journalism organizations are funding them in order for them to just focus on a couple of countries. For example, if this organization is, let's say, funded by the US, they only investigate the things happening in Russia or Azerbaijan or, more like Eastern country or like Russia's allies. And if it's the opposite, they just investigate on US. So these funding creates some kind of a dependency, which is, I think, very important in our job. Like, I'm a journalist, it's also very important for me, media ownership and stuff. But are you 100% sure that you're very transparent about your funders? This is a good thing. But do you feel any dependency on your funders while investigating a case?
No, not at all. And we have no instances in which we even had this conversation with the funder. I think it's very clear from the start. And again, I'm saying we're lucky. We are aware that many foundations and many who we've talked to are not exactly the same. But I think also the way we operate is really good in that sense because we cannot commit to a country. We cannot commit to a region. We don't know where the whistleblower is coming from. They might come from deforestation in Indonesia, or they might come from the cement industry in Turkey. And when we talk to the foundation,
Yeah.
tell them, look, we don't know what's happening tomorrow, so we cannot tell you anything about what we're going to do next year. A big part of it will be a surprise for us as well. So this is almost a condition for our work.
Is anyone really independent under capitalism, though? Are we?
A great question. This is going to be the headlines of this podcast, Maria. Amazing. So since you make this amazing statement, let me continue with you. So exposure alone, as we know, doesn't always lead to change. So what determines whether a disclosure actually leads to accountability? Like, just give me some positive examples. Just give me some hope. Like, in which cases we actually saw that the change happened.
Absolutely. I think we many times just focus on, and I guess because also we work with a lot with journalists, we focus on, is there gonna be headlines? Is there gonna be, a lot of media exposure, and then are people gonna talk about it? But it's not enough that people talk about it. That's why we always do a lot of work afterwards that not many people want to do, because it's the most annoying part, and it's going after regulators, and going after even going to the police sometimes. We work with lawyers here, some consultant lawyers that are amazing at doing what they do, and we always, depending on the country, we always work with lawyers also from the country to make sure that we're doing what's needed. Sometimes it's as easy as, I mean, I mentioned before that we sometimes have cases that are very straightforward and quick. We had a little time ago, we had someone speak to us. He was, participating in the planning of a factory, and he realized that the emissions were going to be way above the legal limits, and transmitted that information to us. We leaked that to the press, and then after that, there was an investigation opened, and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of Ireland, took away the license of that factory until that was fixed. So, that's a very concrete impact that can be achieved quickly by speaking out.
Yeah, that is a very concrete example. I loved it. Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for the final question?
We are ready. Is it about Batman?
No, 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 no. You're the Batman. So
Thanks.
you guys are the Batman. Your whole organization is like a DC or Marvel, or like the Suicide Squad. I don't know.
Thank you so
So
much.
we know that Europe likes to present itself as a global climate leader, let's say. From your perspective, are EU institutions doing enough to protect whistleblowers?
Um,
By the way, before you start, this podcast has been funded by the EU, so please just say yes. I'm just kidding.
the EU is amazing. No,
We see your independence.
um, yes and no. There was a big law, a EU directive to protect whistleblowers that passed a couple of years ago. This was really a really important text. I'm going to start by the positive. Unfortunately, something very important is to be known with whistleblowers. Whistleblowers is about power dynamics. It's about fighting back against the employer. It's about helping the small citizen against the big system. And for that, you don't need only a law. A law is not enough. You need to daily implement that law. You need to daily fix it. And you need to daily go after the one who are abusing of that law. So even with that directive, and now all of the EU has laws to protect whistleblowers, we can see cracks in the systems. And I think we need to do more, and the EU needs to do more to ensure that the authorities that protect whistleblowers are independent, that the protections are real, and that those who try to go after the whistleblowers are punished. From our work, there's also a last thing about the EU that's really important, is the EU has a strong economy and many companies. And many of these companies are present outside of Europe. And what they do outside of Europe is often an absolute mess. And I think in that sense, whistleblowers who blow the whistle on crimes that happen outside of the EU but linked to the EU need more to be protected and amplified by the European Union.
Well, I only heard yes, EU is amazing. So I'm just going to cut the other parts. Well, Gabriel and Maria, thank you for joining. Everything is changing.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Amirjan.
Talk to you soon.